Welcome to the podcast. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the shot clock, overall, what it is, what it means, and also, I guess, why some places still don't have it. So, backstory, a couple weeks ago, put out a tweet or whatever it's called now, that's called X, right? But posted a tweet. Breaking news, all caps. Breaking news. The state of Pennsylvania will play with a shot clock starting immediately with the 2024-25 season. According to sources, the shot clock will be 8 minutes in length and will reset each quarter of play. Already it seems, seems kind of official, and it was sent as a joke, but it seems kind of official. And then if you read that second sentence and going through this process, I kind of realized that most people, sadly, maybe social media, maybe, the TikTok generation, their focus level, their concentration level doesn't last as long as it used to be, right? So in a 2-sentence tweet, the second sentence, people were already, they just moved on. They're excited. They're like, heck yeah, we're about to have a shot clock in Pennsylvania, right? And I'm in the front of that line too, wishing that we had one. But it clearly says, and it's a joke, right? But according to sources, the shot clock will be 8 minutes in length and will reset each quarter of play. That's clearly a joke because the quarters are 8 minutes. Whatever, but it's amazing the amount of messages I receive from friends in the basketball world in the state of Pennsylvania, especially in Pittsburgh, in the Whitfield, but that wanted to talk about it, that were excited about it, that wanted to know where I heard it. They were so pumped up about it. Sadly, it's still a waiting game, right? So the shot clock. Right now in America, there's 50 states. There's 27 states that have it as of today. And that means that there's 23 that don't, right? That's a lot. So thinking about that, why does Pennsylvania not have a shot clock? Right? Who are these guys making this decision? And I mean this with all due respect, right? But who are these guys that have decided, you know what? A big state like us with huge cities, a metropolis like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, these huge cities, we're just going to play as if it's 1950, right? We're comfortable with that. There's enough good talent. Most kids won't play in college anyways. I don't know what their excuses are, but we're just not going to have a shot clock. So Pennsylvania still does not have one. Again, I wish they did. I think it'd be good for the health of the players and their development, but they don't, right? So what does that mean? So in Pennsylvania, what can you see when you go to a youth basketball game? Youth all the way up through the high school level. Team gets up by a little bit, and we all know there's a coach around every corner that, again, they want to win games. You can't even really blame them because if the rules are there and they're allowed to manipulate the rules, they're going to do so to try to win games. It's understandable. So what do you see? You see something called stall ball. So at some point in time, a team gets up and they hold the ball. And by now, I'm sure everybody's seen a video on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, somewhere where a team is up by a lot or a team is up by a little. It doesn't even matter, but a team is up and they just hold the ball. And I'm not talking about like the last 30 seconds of the game, last 10 seconds of the game. I'm not talking about that. And there is another argument that you could make where, okay, you got to come out and play defense, come out and trap, come out and get on them. I understand all that. But the problem is when they hold it for a minute or more, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And I've seen, it's almost like watching paint dry. It's like sitting there watching the dryer, right? Where a team just holds it standing with the ball underneath his arm or on his hip or whatever. He's just standing there near half court and everybody's yelling, play basketball, go play basketball. But the kid's doing what his coach tells them because those are the rules that are available right now, and they just hold the ball. So you see games, and I'm going to talk a lot about Pittsburgh because I'm in Pittsburgh, right? But you see games all over the state and in places where there's no shot clock in the 30s. And I don't know if that's fun basketball. I don't know if you're teaching kids how to prepare to play high-level thinking basketball if they ever want to have a hope to not only just play in college, but to coach in college or to go on and be a thinking basketball human that can go next door to another state and understand how to actually game plan within the realm of how the rest of the world plays basketball. So moving on and thinking about Europe a little bit, I don't want to dwell on Europe too much, but in Europe, there's a 24-second shot clock, and that's just a FIBA rule, right? And you see that with 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds. It's amazing that those kids are able to play with a shot clock, and everybody wonders, there's like this huge generalization where people think Europeans are just way more skilled or way more basketball intelligent. I think what they get is a lot more decisions thrust upon them through the course of a game because they have to think, right? Like the way they play is forced mathematically on them to understand that, okay, I got this many passes, this many dribbles, this many cuts on offense or on defense until somebody has to shoot. And when that shot happens, then you box out and then you go the other way, right? But it's interesting that kids, literal kids, right, like minors, are playing with a 24-second shot clock in Europe. And that's, I don't know, we can get to the argument about, okay, well, you need somebody to run the clock or the cost of the clock, and we'll talk about all that. But the reality is, if they're able to do it there in these, some of them small, almost empty gyms when they have kids playing in these tiny little club gyms, it's amazing that they've figured it out and it's normal for them. And then they get over here. This game has to feel crazy for them if they ever come to a place where there's no shot clock, right? So the NCAA, they have a 30-second shot clock right now. The shot clock, it came to the NCAA. They started using it in 1985. But at that time, it was 45 seconds. But then starting with the 93 season, the NCAA changed it to 35 seconds, and that lasted for roughly 20 years. 2016, then they reduced it to 30 seconds, but crazily enough, on the women's side, they've had 30-second shot clock since 1971. So I don't even know. That's a whole nother argument about why women and men have had different rules, and you still see that to this day with different quarters and halves and whatever. That's a whole nother argument. I want to stay on this shot clock just to make sure we're staying focused on this. But I want to think about how many decisions are missed per game. So in a high school game, there's 4 8-minute quarters. So you think about that right now, and you see coaches, a team will be out there, and the audience for this is basketball people, parents of kids. So for sure you've been at games, right? So how many times have you been watching a game and you see a coach or hear a coach yell out reset, right? Like, what does that even mean? So, all right, they run the play, they swing it, they do a couple dribble handoffs, they cut, they dribble drive, they do whatever they do. They don't like what they see. And then somebody yells out reset. So then they get the ball back to the top, they start again, and they start going through the same cycle again. Meanwhile, the clock's just ticking away, right? So the clock's just ticking and ticking and ticking. And some of these possessions last 45 seconds to a minute to even longer. And it's really interesting to think about, okay, if you were playing with let's just say a 30-second shot clock. If you're playing with a 30-second shot clock, just doing math, you're going to get so many more possessions per game, right? You'll play defense, so many more possessions. But on those possessions, the way a player would close out, if they can look over the offensive player's shoulders and they see there's like 3, 2, 1, right? The way they would close out, and I'm not talking about the end of the game or the end of the quarter. I'm just talking about through the course of a game when there's an actual shot clock above the backboard, right? So as they look over their offensive player's shoulder and they see it's like 3, 2, 1, you close out very differently than if there is no shot clock, because now you're running around, and if you need to try to speed the game up, you run around, you trap, you press, you're chasing, you're gambling, you're doing all that. But a well-coached team knows how to handle pressure. They know how to handle a trap, so they know how to pass and swing and cut and move. And these kids are being deprived. They're being robbed of being able to learn the game where it's more fun. There's more opportunities, there's more chances, and there's more thinking. So it's not just like you could just run around and just hold the ball whenever you feel like it. So talking to a lot of coaches, interestingly enough, okay, it seems like the consensus is that people do want it, right? Like they really want it, like or at least they say they do, but everybody's like, yeah, we need a shot clock. We want a shot clock. So it makes you wonder why there isn't one. It makes you wonder why it hasn't happened. So the arguments that you hear, and anybody that you ask that maybe has a little bit of basketball pull or has an inside scoop or knows an AD or knows somebody that writes for the newspaper, somebody influential, right? So anybody you ask, the main arguments are cost. So they talk about cost, right? Like it's going to cost so much money to get, okay. So they talk about cost, and they talk about training personnel. You're going to have another human that sits there and resets it whenever it needs to reset, be it with a change of possession or an offensive rebound. That's a whole nother, you got to figure out, okay, do you reset it like they do in FIBA? Do you reset it to whatever number? Do you want to reset it to a lower number? Whatever. Or does it just reset back all the way to 30 or 35 or 40 or 45, depending on what they want to put it at, right? So if those are the two main arguments, you think about the types of facilities that some of these schools have. So beautiful gyms, nice lighting, video recording devices mounted on the wall, cheerleaders, snack stands, just a beautiful parking lot, beautiful second gym. So some of these bigger school districts, it's amazing the amount of money and support that they have. And that's a good thing. That's fantastic. It's beautiful. But they can easily implement and install a shot clock. They could do that. They can easily do that, right? So, okay, if the bigger districts can do that, and they can financially, they can easily do that. Or they can have a car wash or a fundraiser or ask a donor, right? So they can do that. So if they were able to phase it in Pennsylvania, there's 6 classifications, right? So if the largest classification simply implemented it, right? They said, okay, we're going to put it in, fill in the blank, starting next year, right? 2026, right? Whatever they want to do. So they're going to put it in the next year or 2 years. Only in 6A, right? They put them in. Any games that take place in those gyms, you play with a shot clock. Somebody comes from a smaller district, you want to play this team, you're going to play a non-section game, you're playing with a shot clock. You travel somewhere else, 6A team wants to go play a 1A team, they don't have a shot clock in that gym, no shot clock that game. All right, so it's easy enough. So if the bigger districts, if they found a way to do that and implement it sooner rather than later, it'd be nice for that to be the learning curve for the vast majority of these schools and these districts, right? So then you get somebody in there. It could be a volunteer parent. If you got to pay a couple bucks for somebody to run it, do that. But you do it in the bigger districts. A year or two later, you phase it into 5A. A year or two later, you phase it into 4, all the way down the line, right? So over the course of 6 years or however long you want to extend it, you just start working it in to the normal budget and the way of doing things. I think it would help the kids tremendously. I think it would help kids better understand the game. I think it would help prepare kids for college. And if you ask basketball people, they would all say the same thing. So if it really does just come down to cost, I think that could be a valid argument for the smaller districts or schools in a district that simply can't afford it. But I know that when there's playoffs, they make a decent amount of money. Football, basketball for sure. But in basketball, they make a decent amount of money. There's decent crowds. And that money is spread out somewhere, right? You're taking in ticket revenue and gate revenue. And then there's championships and all that, which is the way it should be. Could some of that theoretically, right? Bear with me. Could some of that go towards a fund to help schools in need, to help a school or a district that maybe could not afford the actual physical devices, the shot clocks themselves, to put on the backboards or to put on the wall or to put wherever they need to be? On the lowest level, there's games in Europe where they just set them on the floor, right? So you're playing in a small gym somewhere, a small school gym. You're talking about an under 15 game, an under 14 game, something like that. And those shot clocks are on the floor sometimes. And you have a parent that runs it. Are there mistakes sometimes? Yeah, sure. There's still mistakes sometimes. But they have clocks that you can lay out with a really long cord that sits on one side and then opposite diagonal on the opposite side of the baseline, another clock. So each team has one. They could look at it. They know it. When it gets down to a certain number, everybody's yelling out 5, 4, right? So it's like it becomes a part of their basketball DNA where they're thinking about it. You could do the same thing here. So overall, I think the shot clock it's time. It's a necessary addition. It's something that needs to be here. I don't know why it's taking this long. And when I say I don't know why it's taking this long, like it's not even, the day's not even here yet where they have it in Pennsylvania. They still don't. But there's other states out there, and the same argument can be made for them. I feel bad for them. So will everybody play in the NBA someday? No, the answer is an obvious no, right? So it's not about developing players for the NBA. It's not about that. Will every player play in college? Also a no, right? So just doing simple math and the percentages, and you see these numbers, and it's like only point this many or 2.2%, like all this stuff that you see on social media. It's true, right? It's just math. It's just numbers. So it's not about preparing everybody to play in the NBA. It's not about preparing everybody to play D1. But there's going to be a lot of kids that will play in college. There's going to be a lot of kids that want to go on and be coaches. There's going to be a lot of kids that end up being a manager, student manager. There's other kids that want to be involved in basketball in some way, shape, or form. And if they want that, they deserve to be taught. They deserve to be in a situation. They deserve to be playing the modern game, which has a shot clock. What do you guys think about it? This is the first of many podcasts where we're going to be talking about some topics that range from how you can support your kid in a game, how you can support your kid in the car on the ride home, how you can make sure that your son or daughter is doing everything they can to reach their potential. We're going to talk about a wide range of topics, and we want to help. We want this to be something where parents are on their drive. We envision this as something where parents are on their drive to work, home from work, on the way to practice, on the way home from practice, running errands while their kids are at practice, or even sitting there with a pair of headphones watching their kids play a game or watching practice or watching warm-ups or in between games. Basketball going on all the time, especially with a busy spring and summer of AAU. So we want this to be something where parents are able to be a part of the conversation, to learn, to listen, and to engage. So feel free to leave a comment below and let us know what you think. Let us know what you would like to see, or if maybe there's people out there, and please let us know. Maybe there's people out there like, no, like we've been doing it like this since fill in the blank year, 1940, 1950, 1960, whatever, and we want to keep it that way. This is how my dad played. This is how my grandpa played. We want to keep it like that. So, okay, cool. But if that's the case, like I'd be curious to know the reasoning behind it. Like, why do you want to keep the game with no shot clock? Do you like seeing lower score games? Do you like seeing kids run in circles for a minute at a time? Like, is that a part of what you enjoy watching? I would like for kids to learn how to pass, cut, move, space, and how to make really good decisions with the ball in their hands. And then most importantly, and I think this is something that you see a lot more with quote unquote overseas players, that they know how to play without the ball. But if there's no shot clock, I don't think there's any impetus for them to be forced to do that, because you can just stand in the same place and wait until somebody guards you and pressures you. And then the good old fashioned reset gets yelled out from somebody on the sideline at some point in time, and they just run the play again. So let's see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully there's a shot clock at some point in time. If this stimulated any type of enthusiasm, excitement, one way or the other, please leave a comment. Let us know something else, another topic that you'd like to hear discussed, and we'll make it happen. Come get some.